Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today I have Kristin Morrison with me. Kristin started a pet sitting and dog walking business when she was 25. It grew to be one of the largest of its kind in California. While she owned that business for nearly 2 decades, Kristin hired over 250 people and was featured on Yahoo Finance, New York Post, ABC, NBC, and CBS. She's an author, speaker, and founder of a 6-figure pet business academy where she helps pet owners take their businesses to the next level and where she provides general business coaching for all types of business owners, entrepreneurs, and innovators. In addition to all of that, as if it wasn't enough, Kristin also is the host of 2 of her own podcasts, The Business Pathfinder and Prosperous Pet Business Podcast, which can be found on all the standard podcast hosting apps. Kristin, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm very happy to be here, Marianne. It's lovely to see you and be with you.
And you guys, Kristin is coming from gorgeous Hawaii, so we should all be just a tiny bit jealous. I can see out her back window over her shoulder, and it's a gorgeous jungle out there, right?
Yes.
Just this beautiful, all this beautiful plants. It's just stunning.
Yeah, we live on 9 acres in the jungle here, and then we live part-time in Northern California.
Glorious.
So, yeah, it's a wild and woolly place. It is beautiful.
I guess I want to start at the beginning because based on your bio, it's clear that you have been a go-getter, super performer right out of the gate since you were a young adult, right? You've been a high achiever forever.
Yeah.
And I know from our intro call that you talked about you had to find that place where you could kind of turn the always on position off and learn how to balance a little better.
Yes.
Find some methods to slow down and relax and how important that was to your life. Talk to us a little bit about how you went from kind of being that always on to the realization you had to switch that and what that sort of looked like.
Yeah. So I did feel like I was always on. And for a while, I really enjoyed that, actually. Adrenaline. Oh, it's so cute because my dog is wanting to hop in this conversation. Yeah. So, adrenaline can be really addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us that are type A naturally, that find a lot of value from getting things done, from ticking things off the to-do list, from producing and creating, all of that can really reward us with money, accolades, publicity, adrenaline. All of those things can be really addictive.
I agree 1,000,000%. Many of us were groomed to go after those things, right?
Yeah.
We've been programmed that those are the things we need to look for.
Exactly. And society, again, it really rewards us for achieving, for making money, for producing. And, if you talk to people these days and you ask them how they're doing, more often than not, many people will say, I'm so busy.
Yeah.
It's like this constant refrain in response to how are you doing? But it doesn't really answer the question of how are you doing?
100%.
Yeah. And it's so cute how my dog is really into this conversation.
Yeah, you guys, the dog keeps jumping up wanting to come in and say a little something.
Well, I have her toy. She's trying to play with me, so she is very intuitive, this little creature. Yeah. And so for a while there, I really thrived on that. I thrived on the experience of making a lot of money having a lot of people say, "Oh, you're so successful, Kristin." And really, when I was thriving on that, I wasn't tuned into what I needed, me as a human being. I was thriving on being a human doing, but is that really the life that I want to lead?
Yes.
And I began to really look at that. And when I created my first business, which, as you mentioned, was a pet sitting and dog walking business, and I created that in my mid 20s, having no business experience at all. And, as a result of having no business experience, I really had to hit the ground running because I got a lot of clients quickly and I had to kind of make it up as I went along or learn quickly. And I did a little of both. And was able to create success out of that. I say that in quotes because really what was happening is I was working all the time. I was exhausted. The part of me that felt a sense of worth and value, that need was being met on a big level. But there was another need that was not being met, which was me having time and energy for myself, the soulful me, the me who requires quiet and requires non-doing, but rather being with the people that I love, being with my dog, being in nature, just being still.
I had very similar experiences. So I'm curious, was there something that sort of awoke you or made you realize? Because I get the whole, we can get addicted to it. We
Yeah.
thrive on it. We have been trained to go after it.
Yes.
But typically what I'm finding out over and over from talking to people is that in many cases, there's sort of something that happens, bubbles up the situation and makes people take a step back and realize it. Did that happen for you?
Well, it wasn't one defining moment that I can remember anyway. But for me, it was hearing over and over, "You're such a successful businesswoman, Kristin." And realizing I loved that. I loved hearing it. But the truth was, when I really pondered that, I didn't feel successful.
Mm.
I had a lot of money and I had a lot of people looking at me as if I was successful. But internally, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel successful because to me, success is having time and money.
Yeah.
I didn't even have time to spend money. I was so busy. And what I noticed, here's the thing, actually, if there was a defining moment for me, it was this. Whenever I would get off the busy train and slow down, either it happened naturally in my business due to my business slowing down for natural reasons, or I consciously chose to slow down by being on a retreat or something, I realized, oh, wow, these feelings are bubbling up. Things that I've pushed to the side that I have not wanted to deal with when I was so busy. And so that created a perpetual running after busyness as a way to not feel.
Yeah.
And I realized at some point I have to feel this.
Yes. Yes.
If I want to live the kind of life that I deeply desire, which is a life of really feeling the success, not just having financial success, which to me is intangible. It's money. We can't hug that at night. We can buy things, but, for a moment we'll feel great, but then that dissipates.
Yeah.
But really for me, what I realized is, oh, wow, what truly makes me happy are the relationships in my life. And I felt very lonely because I hadn't made time for relationships. And what I discovered, is if we don't make time for them for a while, then people are not going to be able to, they're not going to be there for us when we actually want them to be, right? And so, how are we showing up for our life? How are we showing up for our business in a way that can join our life and create a fluidity, right?
That question is such an insightful question because I think often we don't even recognize we have that sort of wall up and our relationships are only so deep because to your point, we're not making the time to prioritize them and to create that strong connection. And I think what's so interesting, we did have to spend tons of time and effort building and strengthening and deepening our business relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't be successful. I mean, that is the key to success is relationships, right? So it would seem obvious that that is something that's necessary to really nurture in personal life as well. And yet I feel like many of us didn't do that or don't do that as naturally.
That's right. I love that you're bringing this up, Marianne, because I had this moment in 2013. This was a defining moment for me. I had really made some shifts and changes in terms of my personal life and really putting energy into friendships. But what I realized is, oh my goodness, I would love to be married. Like I had this thought when I woke up on January 1st, 2013, that I want to be married. And it's like, wow, how have I even made time for that? Like I've made time for friendships, but haven't really put myself out there. And so I realized if I could put the type of energy that I had put into my business into my dating life and really put it, expending time, money, and energy to find my partner, that it would probably happen. Like that was a real aha moment. And so I decided to do that. And I began delegating even more intensely than I had in my business so that I could create space. I went from working, 40 hours a week to working 10 hours a week. I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. In that time, just like 2, 3 hours a day, so that I could really devote some energy into dating, into enjoying my life, so that I wasn't this incredibly driven person when I finally met my partner, if that was to happen for me. And no joke, 9 months later, after I decided that, and I began actively dating and doing some deep inner work, right? I had to really look at my beliefs. Like, I'm too old to be married is a thought I had. But I had to flip that around and think, what if I'm the perfect age to get married?
Love that.
And so that became my mantra. Like, I'm the perfect age to get married. And I ended up meeting my husband 9 months later. We went on our first date on August 31st, 2013. And I didn't know when we went on that date that he would be my husband, but I knew that I really liked him and I knew that he was a contender. And yeah, we're married, and it's not a perfect life by any means.
Is anyone?
Right. It's super challenging sometimes. We're both very strong people. He's a corporate attorney. I can still slip into that very driven mode, which kind of makes him a little crazy.
Well, that's a good point. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but I think even the shifts, once you shift, once you rewire your thoughts, once you create new habits, the natural inclination to go back to the who you were for so many years, it's normal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about that a lot in the group we have a lot of folks on, a wellness journey and weight loss and getting more fit and all that. Same thing. You can change the habits that you've had for 40, 50 years. It's an ongoing effort to stay in that new mode.
It is. And there's a consciousness that is required to creating a transformation. Anytime we create a transformation, it really is about, at least in my life and the coaching clients that I work with, it's often about small incremental steps toward a big change.
Yeah.
It's not like overnight.
Yeah.
And even in meeting my partner, it took 9 months, right? It wasn't like the next week I met my partner. Wasn't quite ready for him when I had decided that I wanted someone like him in my life. So it took 9 months for me to actually be ready and available and able to witness and see that this person could be a possibility for me. So I love that you said that.
You know what I love though? And I was going to ask you about this, and it's a great tie-in because you set the intention.
Yes.
So you set the intention that you wanted to get married.
Yeah.
You flipped the script on how you were thinking about that, about yourself in that perspective or that lens.
Yeah.
And then you set the intention. Give me some thoughts on how we can advise people to set intentions around bringing more fun and cultivating more joy in their life.
Well, I mean, a simple act that can be a good first step is to really look at what brings you joy. And if for those of you listeners who have been really busy, who have been running from your feelings, no shame, right? But yeah, you're going to be like a deer in the headlights. I have no idea what brings me joy. It's been so long since I've done it, since I've done something fun. I don't know. So let me tell you something. This morning, this is a real life story. This morning, my husband and I, he was feeling pretty stressed out. He had a work call that brought him a lot of stress. Okay. And I said, would you like to go on a walk with me and Lily? Lily's our dog. And he said, oh, no, I can't. I'm too busy. And I said, how about just going outside with us for a moment? And he said, okay, I can do that. And so we began walking just outside in our yard. And then we walked for a little bit and he began looking up. So when we are so busy, often we're looking straight ahead or we're looking down. We forget to look up. And there's magic up there, especially when you're outside. There's trees, there's the sky. If it's at night, there's the stars, there's the moon. Look up. And it wasn't like I said, look up, but that's just naturally what often happens when we're outside, right? Maybe we're looking down, maybe we're looking straight ahead, but then at some point we'll look up. And my husband began to do that. And he began to soften and like get out of his head and into his body and into his heart.
Mm.
And then at a certain point, and we'd never done this, we bought our house with 9 acres 2 years ago. And there's lots of places to do this, but we've never done this. He said, let's sit down on the grass. We usually sit on a chair or something. And I said, that sounds great. So we sat on the grass and then we actually were lying on the grass, looking up through the trees at the blue, blue, blue sky. And it was magic.
Out of character for him, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so sometimes it just takes, I knew that a walk would be a bridge too far. Just, sweetheart, let's go outside. And we can say that to ourselves, sweetheart, look up. Sweetheart, go outside. Look at one flower.
Yes.
Sit on the grass or call a friend. Like do something simple. Simple things bring joy. One thing that I ask people, and this is a really fun question to ask people, especially people that you are meeting for the first time, say at a party or something, it can be an icebreaker. You can say, what's something good that happened for you today? So it's not gratitude because, what are you grateful for? That's something that so many people say and it's kind of overused, but what's something good that happened today? And when I say that to strangers, especially, their head will kind of cock like a bird and they'll go, ah, and often they'll say, that's a good question. And they'll get out of their own way. Maybe they were on a mission to, talk to me about business or
Yeah.
ask me a question totally unrelated. But what it does is it gets us out of our head and into our hearts.
Yeah, it takes it down a notch.
It really does.
Yeah.
So that can be the beginning of joy finding. It's sort of like having a metal detector, like a joy detector. And so how can you begin to look for the little beep beeps,
Yeah.
not the loud beep beeps that, really you would hear on a metal detector, but the beginning ones that cause you to create a stepstone to joy. So what's something good that happened today can be a question you could ask your partner or a family member, any kind of family member, and even asking yourself that question, what's something good that happened today? So that can begin to look at where do I experience joy? Joy and good are usually the same things, right?
Yeah. I mean, what that makes me think of is it can make you start to recognize the places and things that do bring you joy.
That's right.
When you were talking about it, I'm thinking, yeah, that's me. You guys, I raised my hand. Like, I've said this out loud. Like, I struggle to relax, to let myself go, to have fun, all those things. And I'm just starting to, kind of do that work and open
Yeah.
up. And that was my word of the year this year, was fun. And I think, though, to your point, is if you start to really, instead of always thinking about the big things, which are great too, add some big things in that
Totally.
you've always wanted to do or that really make you laugh, whatever. But I think it is similar to the gratitude in that the more you notice things that you're grateful for, we all know the more comes in.
That's right.
The more you recognize, the more is there. You focus on those kind of things. So I think the more you call out, recognize, name it, this is the thing today, or these are the things that really brought me a moment of joy today, and it can be as small as a flower.
That's right.
Then I do think it will help cultivate and make you realize that you have more there. You just have to tune into it, maybe.
Yeah. And I think, especially for those of us that are feeling a lot of stress on a daily, ongoing basis, there's a lot somatically that gets locked in our bodies that makes it hard for us to relax. And so sometimes our body can be the gateway or the trailhead to begin to open up to joy. But if our bodies are so locked up and our shoulders are so stressed, it's going to be hard to tap into that. And so, one of the things that I do, a practice that I do on a regular, ongoing basis these days, is something called breath work. And it's circular breathing. I don't just do it. There's an online program that I use, there's apps that you could, find lots of ways to access these breathwork sessions. And you can do them on your own. You can wear a headset and they will guide you, usually with music, to do circular breathing, which can then, for me, what happens is it really helps me get into my body. It helps me release tension and stress that have been locked away for literally years. And it is one of the most powerful practices that I have discovered to really begin to feel joy. Because again, if we're so tense, when we try to experience joy, we're going to be experiencing it in our head, which is okay, but it's not the full Monty. And really, if our bodies are more relaxed, and for some people, it may be doing yoga. For others, it may be going on a regular walk where, our hips are moving and our arms are moving and we're able to really let go. Like, however,
That's the key.
it is.
That's the key. And that's I want to just stop there and tune into that for a second.
Yep.
Because I think it's important to recognize that you can, I guess, have fun or whatever, or receive it at different
Yes.
levels. Because I do feel like sometimes if you're I'm going to wound up too tight or whatever, too tense, too stressed out, you can't really receive it fully. So I think, to your point, finding that mechanism to really unwind,
Yes.
to really let loose.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a big factor for some of us that haven't quite gotten there yet.
Completely. And so for some people, it might be dancing, like put on a really fantastic song that gets you cannot not dance, whatever that might be. Some people aren't dancers, so it might be breath work, it might be yoga, but really bring your body into this conversation, right? It's important if you can let go in your body, then you'll probably be able to let go in your spirit, in your soul, in your heart. It really is the gateway, I believe, to the access point to be able to experience and be open to joy in its many forms. And I feel like this may sound corny as hell, but I feel like joy is all around. It's up to us to open up, to see it, to really see it. And sometimes we may need to say it out loud. For example, I've got a crazy chicken. Okay. This is going to be kind of weird, but I've got a crazy chicken who her name is Henrietta, and she is often at our screen door at our kitchen, looking in, wanting food. She thinks she's a house chicken. She's not. So, what I will do is I will say to my husband, oh my God, Henrietta is at the door. And we start to crack up, you know, but sometimes I don't even notice her because I'm in my head and I'm not really even seeing her. There is a chicken at my door.
Yes.
Like that should be funny every single time it happens. That's kooky, But if I'm in my head, I'm not connected.
Yeah. So I think the key there is learning to notice when you're stuck in your head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can you begin to get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
So even before the joy list, the things that bring you joy, big and small, is looking at, is your body tense? How can you let go in your body to be able to open up, to be able to receive joy? And once you've been able to do that, perhaps asking your partner, what's something good that happened today? They will say something and they will 9 times out of 10 ask you back, what's something good that happened today? If you don't have a partner, ask your friend that, ask your family member, and then create the list.
That's a great strategy. So do something to relieve the stress and let your body relax.
Yeah.
And then create the list and create the dialogue, but also the practice because it takes practice, right?
It does.
Right. So if you start doing that repeatedly, you're going to build the habit over time. And I also think, to your point about your chicken, Henrietta, it's a little kooky. It's a little kooky to talk about. And I think doing some of these things feel a little kooky at first, right? When you're not used to it,
That's right.
It feels uncomfortable.
It does. And, I'm so used to asking, like, what's something good that happened today to people. I'm a part of a co-working video connection. So I get matched with strangers all over the world and I do video co-working basically. It's wonderful. And so I often ask that question to strangers. And there are times where I'm like, oh God, I feel shy about asking. They look so serious. I think they're going to be cranky if I ask this, But then I do it and they smile. And they often say, ah, that is a great question. Like they shock me with their response. I have a preconceived notion of how I think they're going to react. It's actually up to me to get out of my own way and just ask the question. And then there's this incredible rapport that happens that really lightens us both up.
That's what I was just going to say. That question snaps them out of that seriousness.
Totally.
And out of their head too, because think about it. Like you've been to meetings or you've been to calls and you're in your head thinking, this is what I'm going to say. This is what I got to accomplish. This is how I have to come across, whatever, all the things.
That's right. That's right.
And probably when you ask that question, it sort of knocks them off guard and they're like, wait, what? Wait, what? And they have to tune in.
And most people who are part of the video co-working they are type A's. They are on there because they're accountable. They're going to get stuff done. Let's get to it. And so part of it is you check in and then you go on mute and then you check out, And so I am throwing a wrench in there. I'm like, what's something good wait, before we dive in, what's something good? And they go, oh, that is a great question. Or it's like they get out of their trance.
Yes. And have to be present.
That's right. And they see me as a person instead of somebody that is a vehicle for them to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Right? I am a human being asking them a very humanizing question.
I like that. I like it for what it does in that specific setting and the conversation and how it builds that dialogue between two people. But I also like it because it's training yourself to look for those things.
It is. It is. And what I found, because sometimes I get matched with people again and again, like in the future, Maybe it's been a month or two, but I can tell when I last worked with them. And I'll say, like, what's something good? And they'll go, oh, you're the what's something good person. And they'll say, oh, I started doing that. And so it's like this ripple effect of what's something good.
Love that.
And it's helping people get out of their own way.
Well, and spread joy.
That's right. It spreads joy. Yeah. And it can be a very simple thing. Like some people will say, I had an incredible peanut butter and jelly sandwich today, and others will say, I got a phone call with my mom, and we often have difficult conversations, but today was a really good conversation.
So all over the map, but it gives them a minute to really think about that and tap into it. I like that.
Does. And they get to go as deep or as light as they want to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like that. That's a good one. So we've talked about setting intentions and building a practice around joy and finding ways to relax our body and be in an open state for it, bringing more awareness to it. I know one of the things that you coach people on is, in general, is goal setting.
Yes.
And achieving goals. I want to go beyond the setting. So let's say we've set some goals. We're saying, here's some of the things I'm going to do to try to cultivate this practice of joy and fun in my daily life. Mm-hmm. Give us some of your best advice on not getting stuck and moving towards those goals to fruition, because I think we all know in January, everybody sets a bunch of goals and lots of them fall to the wayside, right? A lot of people struggle with the consistency to meet them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's true. It's true. So, I can talk about my own practice and then in my work with my coaching clients, which is the same because I practice what I preach. It's important to me and it works for me. And so I know it'll likely work for my clients. So what I do is every year I set 10 goals. Some of those are personal goals, some of those are business goals. And it's really important for me as somebody who tends to get stuff done to include some fun goals. So the personal goals are often exciting and fun for me. Now, so I set annual goals, 10 annual goals, and then every month I create monthly goals that are based on those annual goals. And then every week, I create weekly goals that are based on the monthly goals. Okay.
You're eating that elephant one bite at a time. You're breaking it down into smaller and smaller chunks.
That's right. That's right. And that's great in theory. A lot of us, we all know that is something that's important to do. It's one thing to know that. It's another thing to actually do it. Mm-hmm. There's a particular software system that I use that actually allows me to not only write my goals and keep my goals on there, but to track them and score them and then create them, right? So each month I score my goals for the prior month, and then I create new goals based on what I haven't accomplished and the new things that I want to accomplish. Same with the weekly goals. I can write them down and then score them. And that becomes something that I do that keeps me on track. If I notice that the goals that are fun are not getting attention, I often notice that my emotional life is not where I want it to be. I mean, it really is a barometer for how well I'm doing emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of it. And so that's why it's so important. It has impact. And it not only impacts all of those realms, emotional, mental, spiritual for me, but it has impact on my business goals as well. If all I'm doing is business, that is not a fun life. And I am going to be resentful. And it's probably going to take me at least 5 times as long to do my business goals, to accomplish those business goals, because I'm not infusing fun in my life. And so there's going to be a part of me that is going to be upset and maybe even angry at me. Kristin, what's the point of this life? If all I'm doing is toiling, that is not the life I want to live. Okay. And so there's something powerful about really staying on track with that in terms of goals. And you don't need a software system to do this. You can get a pad of paper, write 10 goals. You can then write your first month's goals. You can then write your first week's goals. You can score it up to 100%. It can be very low tech. We tend as humans, especially high achieving humans, to make things more complicated than they need to be. And then what happens is we may not do them. So be willing to do it on a very small scale. Get a pad of paper out. Write 10 goals. Have five of those goals be business, five of those goals be personal. Make sure some of those personal goals are fun, and maybe you don't know yet what fun is. Have one of the goals be figure out what's fun for me. I have a family member who is in the midst of a very intense divorce right now. He has been really putting all of his energy for the last number of years on his kids and his wife. His kids are now teenagers. They're really not interested in hanging out with him. His wife, they're splitting up. He has no idea. I asked him, what do you like to do for fun? He said, I don't know, sis. I don't know. And I'm like, sweetheart, it's okay. It's totally understandable that you do not know what fun is. He doesn't really even have close friendships because his whole energy has been spent on his kids, again, who are now teenagers. They don't want to hang out with him. They likely will when they get older. I keep telling him that, his marriage is ending and he is like in this big midlife crisis of who am I and what do I enjoy doing? And so it's bittersweet. And so let's not wait until a crisis hits to determine who we are and what we enjoy doing and who we enjoy doing things with. Find your friends, get friends, find your joy. Where is it? What is it?
I love that message because I think many of us do wait. I think this is common, what you just talked about with him. Maybe not the divorce side, but think about how many people go through this when they're children. They become empty nesters, right?
Yes, same.
Very common to become an empty nester and then look around and go, wait, what do I do with my spare time? What makes me happy? Because no longer are you filling those moments with going to the soccer games or running to cheerleading or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like you're not being filled up with the kids stuff.
That's right. So fill yourself up with you.
Yes.
What do you enjoy?
Yes.
Do it while the kids are young, if possible. But it's never too late, actually, to find our joy. Never.
Right.
I coach people who are in their 80s and they are determining their joy. And that is a exquisitely beautiful thing. When they are like, my partner died or, my spouse died after all these years of marriage.
I love that.
I don't know who I am. And I say, let's find out.
Yes.
Let's explore this. If you are still breathing, you have life left to live. Make it good. Enjoy it. Have fun. Have fun. And, it's also for me, part of having fun, and maybe for some listeners, is doing some deep inner work to really determine, like, why have I given all of my joy away or my power away to the people in my life? Why have I lived my life through others? Why have I been afraid, perhaps, to discover who I am? And be willing to go through that fear of self-discovery.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is right. There is so much power and magic and miracles in the void of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
If we think we know who we are, we're constantly changing, just like our cells are constantly regenerating after a number of months, right? We become a whole new person. So allow yourself to live a number of different lifetimes in this one lifetime that you have to live.
Yeah, that's a great point because even if you were in touch with those things and who you were, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, it does change.
Yeah,
And you almost should be doing, not almost, you should be doing a ongoing exercise of checking in with yourself.
that's right. And if you're married or if you have a significant other that you've been with for a long time, it's important too, because who you were when you met that person, you're very different, they're very different.
Yeah.
So, really have a deep conversation with your significant other and say, who are you now? And you may think you know who they are, but have them tell you. And then ask them to ask you, who are you? Who are you now? How have you changed? Who do you see yourself becoming in the next year? Who do you want to become? That's where intention setting becomes powerful too, right?
I agree with that. And I like those questions, but I was thinking some people are going to find that their spouses aren't ready, willing, wanting to do the work, and that's okay. That's okay,
Yeah, amen.
right?
That's right.
But I think you can still have some. I was trying to think of a way, as you were talking, I was thinking of a way, how can we make it a little lighter for those not willing to really do the deep, self-reflection? I think some of the questions still work, like, how have you changed in that? What things are fun for you now that you didn't enjoy then? Or what, you can lighten it up a little bit, right?
That's right. We're not all at the same page all the time. It does not have to be heavy. In fact, if you're thinking it's going to be heavy, like deep does not always mean heavy,
Yeah.
right? We may think that deep means heavy, but it's like we're digging a little bit.
Explore,
Yeah, we're exploring.
probe under the covers.
Yeah, and curious. Get curious. That's
Yeah.
like curiosity and fun, they go together. They are partners in crime and they are amazing. If you can bring curiosity and fun to these questions, oh my goodness, what will emerge may amaze you. It may be bubbling to the surface and so happy that you brought it up, right?
Yeah. And I think, curiosity keeps coming up with everyone that I talk to have a curious lens on things versus a judgmental lens. So I think training ourselves to reframe our thoughts around that, right?
Yes,
To
that's
go
right.
probing with the curiosity lens versus a judgment lens. I think that's important. I think there's a
Yeah,
distinction there.
I do too. I love that you brought that up. And often if we're judgmental out there, meaning the people in our lives or, whoever we're noticing that we're judgmental, we are judgmental first and foremost with ourselves.
Yes.
And so, how can we bring self love into the equation? How can we begin to really notice? And that's the first step, right? It's just like what's the first step with joy, or what's the first step with self-love is really noticing when we are beating up on ourselves, when we are saying, you're so this or you're so that to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're doing it inside, we're doing it outside. Jung, who was a famous psychoanalyst, a Swiss psychoanalyst, said, what is outside is always inside and vice versa. So, what is inside gets put outside. And so it starts within. How can we begin to love ourselves? And part of that self love can come from our bodies, interestingly enough. Doing the work that we talked about earlier, the curiosity work of like, where am I holding my stress? How can I begin to let that go? Because if we can begin to let that go, that stress go in our bodies, it will move up into our minds.
Mm.
We can begin to let the stress go in our minds. But, we can't always start with our minds. Like if somebody wants to do meditation, they're going to have that monkey mind inevitably in the beginning.
Yeah.
So start with your body. Begin to let the knots in your body go, and breathing. Like I was talking about, breath work can be very helpful for that, to let the knots go that have been accumulating for years and years. Yoga, movement, walking,
All of it.
just simply swinging your arms if you're like not a dancer, but you want to like just do a little snake dance, like
Let loose, relax a little. Yeah.
yeah, and just
Yeah.
notice how you feel this tingliness
Yeah.
after you do that, this bubbling up that wants to come. It's powerful.
It is powerful. And I think noticing is a great word, because even when you start doing those things,
Mhm.
the relaxation mechanisms and noticing how it makes you feel, that is a
Yes.
first step. That is definitely a first step.
It is. That's right.
Well, I feel like we've been all over the map, but this has
I
been
know.
fantastic. I think we've given some really great pointers and a framework out there for people to just start thinking about how to really set their intentions and build some practices and open up to the possibility and create more connections. Connection definitely
Mhm.
leads to joy. So I think we've hit on all those things. Before we go, of course, we'll put all your links and ways that people can connect with you in the show notes, but I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything we didn't hit on that you wish we did, or any final parting advice you want to leave with the audience?
Yeah. So I think it starts with self-reflection, which can lead to self-connection.
Mm.
And starting there can ripple out. So bring it back home, really. And by home, I mean back home into your body, into your heart, into your mind. Begin to be willing and curious to look within, to discover. If you are a foreign country that you're exploring, what do you like? It may be that it's been a while since you've known who you are, and you may not be the person that you thought you were, and allow yourself to be different. Maybe you've never considered yourself a fun, joyful person, but maybe it's because you've been working so hard for so many years, or you've been so focused on the kids for so many years, or your ailing parents for so many years, or building a business for so many years. And so take some of that energy that you've been putting out there and put it in here, into yourself.
I love that. And I think, just to add on to that, who you were before or once were does not have to be who you are now.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.